Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Rcha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Micah, the 7th chapter. In this chapter, right, it's basically going into the Micah as he describes, what it's like having to dwell amongst Israel in a land perverse, scarce of judgment and righteousness, and just filled with, wickedness, deceit, and just violence. Okay, but within that, there's also mention of deliverance. Okay, there's also mention of this being a temporary state, but at the end, the Lord would still have mercy upon Jacob. And as the scriptures say, yet choose Israel. So, as we've seen throughout the previous chapters in the book of Micah, having been contemporaries with Isaiah and been there, prophesied, right, both to the northern and the southern kingdom, he also witnessed the downfall or the destruction of the northern kingdom, right? He was there at the time. Let me just say that. So, this is Micah chapter 7, verse 1. Woe is me, for I am as when they have gathered the summer fruits, as the grape gleaners of the vintage. There is no cluster to eat. My soul desired the first ripe fruit. Now, does this mean that Micah was actually starving? No. But what's happening here is he is likening the state of Israel in which he is dwelling in to be like that of or at least he's likening the moral and spiritual state of Israel to be like a field after the harvest, having been wiped clean with barely any traces of value or righteousness left within it. So as he says, woe is me, for I am as, he's like, basically, it feels like when they have gathered the summer fruits. So after the harvest, you would have the reapers and the grape cleaners, and they would basically go through and they would gather the the harvest, right? The olives, the grapes, the fruits, the figs, all of those things. So he's likening it on to coming into a field after that's done, and there barely being anything left. As it says, there is no cluster to eat. There's nothing left on the trees. My soul desired the ripe fruit, but there is none. And this is likening, once again, like I mentioned before, it's like looking through the land and trying to find righteousness, or trying to find, spiritual morality or piety. And and you can barely find that because the land was just filled with violence and perverseness and ungodly ways. Verse 2, the good man is perished out of the earth, and there is none upright among men. See, and this was the state that Israel was in, and this is what the Lord was beholding. But it makes sense, right? Because this was prior to the destruction that would come and eventually get them out of the land, because of this state that they were in that warranted that judgment. So as he says, it feels like, like all the righteous men are gone, right? There are none upright amongst these people. They all lie in wait for blood. They hunt every man his brother with a net. And lying in wait for blood, goes into setting people up. All right, being, for example, I'll use modern day examples to really make the point, because I'm sure we've all experienced or seen what it's like in a modern sense. So it can be easy for you to visualize these kinds of things. Now, today, you'll have amongst our people, right? We even say it how if the Lord hadn't brought us out of that, right, into this knowledge, when you look at our people, when I say our people, I'm referring to the Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. When you look at the way that they live today, you would think that there are no, actual right-minded individuals amongst them. Majority of the women are promiscuous. They dress like whores. They behave, in an unruly and non-feminine manner. A lot of the men are, either drug dealers, murderers, gang members, um, just destitute, right? And even if they're not on the physical, physically messed up level, right? Inwardly, they're still wicked. They have wicked intents. They have wicked thoughts. Yeah, you may see a man, an Israelite, and you may say, "Oh, look, this guy, he might have his life together. He has a good job. He works a 9 to 5. He has a family and kids, but he might be committing adultery with another man's woman." See, so you look at our people, and they're just in a destroyed state. There's corruption on every level, and it feels like there are no more righteous, men or women amongst us, save for the Lord's elect that are striving for that. So taking it back to the time of Micah, you can imagine what this would look like. So as it says, they lie in wait for blood, both in the literal sense, but also in terms of setting others up. Today they do that. You have people that actually set up even their loved ones, right, for whatever, money, violence, whatever. They hunt every man his brother with a net, which is to set traps. And the brother meaning like your neighbor. It doesn't have to necessarily mean your biological brother. But they set one another up, for either to scam them, to steal from them, to rob them, whatever the case is. And this was like commonplace. Verse 3, that they may do evil with both hands earnestly. See, so the land is such that people, the inhabitants of it are eager to do evil. Now, what it means is the things that they desire to do are not the things of righteousness, and the means in which they use to attain it are not the correct ways to do it. But yet they do it so quickly without a second thought. The prince asketh, and the judge asketh for a reward. The prince and the judge were people in positions of authority. Hence, they would be the ones to say the final say, or to judge a matter, or to give a decree on a certain situation. But they were corrupt, meaning they judged for hire. So based on, as it says, the reward, which is a bribe, they would either pervert judgment, right, or rule in an unjust manner because they were getting paid. And the great man, which is talking about the rich, he uttereth his mischievous desire, so they wrap it up. See, so he'll say, okay, I want this to happen, or I'm trying to get that. Let's make it happen. Bribe the judges, bribe the princes, and then boom, they will go ahead and do it. And then they will just cover it up like it was all good. Verse 4, the best of them is as a briar. The most upright is sharper than a thorn hedge. And that's an emphasis on just how degraded our people were, and even are still to this day, to the point where the best of the people, at the ones that are not fully gone, are as good as a briar. And when you look at a briars is sharp. It's not really good for much. Really, you don't want briars and thorns in your fields, but that's the best you'll get. And the most upright is sharper than a thorn hedge, right? So the ones that are considered to be in comparison to the rest, upright, are as dangerous as like a thorny hedge. Now, today, one somewhat related example would be, today, the fact that you can say, or you have to say, like, you meet a woman and you even have to ask what's her body count, right? But today, if somebody was like, yo, you meet a shorty, right? And her body count is like below 5. What you think about that? Or below 3. What you think about that? A lot of men would be like, oh yeah. Like, a good amount of men would be like, yo, that's not bad. Like, yo, yeah, I could work with that. But in actuality, as to what the standard should be, it should be none, right? Or at the most, 1 in the sense that she's like a widow, to get remarried. But the even the best, right? The women in today's society that you would look at and say, all right, she's good enough in comparison to the standard of how women should be. They're not going to cut it. But because women are so, far gone in today's society, you'll take I mean, you'll take a rotten apple over actual literal, shit any day, right? If you had to eat a rotten apple or you had to eat actual shit, then all of a sudden a rotten apple is not so bad. But a rotten apple compared to what an apple should be is still bad, right? So that's just like an example to show that's how bad things are, that even bad things here are considered, good, because everything else is so corrupt. And it's interesting that a lot of women call themselves bad bitches. All right. And they like it so. And none of them want to be called a good bitch. It's always, you a bad bitch. But anyway. So it says here, the day of thy watchman and thy visitation cometh. So as Micah is saying here, like, this isn't going to go on forever. The Lord is not going to let this continue to run as it is. He's about to bring judgment. So the day of thy watchman is the day that you look out for. Not look out for in the sense that you're eager for it to happen, but when you have watchmen, they look out for danger, right? So the day of thy watchman here is the day that they're really on watch for. Should something like this happen, they could warn the people because it wouldn't be good. And thy visitation, right, or your punishment cometh from who? From the Lord. Now shall there be perplexity. See, so now there's going to come a point where the Lord is going to bring distress, confusion, and he's going to put an end to that wicked behavior. As we saw during the time of Micah, the Lord did, both to the northern kingdom and to the southern kingdom, because they both were corrupt. Verse 5, trust ye not in a friend, put ye not confidence in a guide. When you go into the word guide, it goes into like one that is intimate or near to you. Let me just pull it up here. 441. Right. So it says friend, intimate. Okay. So what Micah is saying here is the land was so bad. It was so polluted. You couldn't really even trust in those that were close to you, because one second you're telling them something very important. The next they turn on you. Right. Or the next, they're using that against you. And that holds true even till today, because people are not honest. There's always an ulterior motive. So you got to be careful. As it says, put not confidence in the guide, because once again, they could be here today, best as friends, and then best of friends. And then tomorrow they could be the one setting you up. How many times have you heard stories, even till today, of somebody's best friend, killing them or setting them up, or, I don't know, just crossing them over. It says, keep the doors of thy mouth from her that lieth in thy bosom, right? And her that lieth in the bosom is your woman, right? Your wife, or the one that is close to you. Today, we would call it pillow talk, right? But watch what you say, because even she, as close as you think she may be, can still tomorrow become an enemy, right? And he's saying that because that was the nature of the inhabitants of Israel at the time. To where your enemies became those that were close to you. Those that were supposed to be close to you would now be those you had to watch out for. Verse 6, once again, even till today, how many times do you see, even when women try to set up their men? I saw a video actually of that on social media. You had a woman who tried to set up the man she was with to be killed. So I think it was in the night, they hear like a knocking on the door, and she goes immediately to like open the door, and he's like, wait, hold on, like we don't, like, who is that? We don't even know what's going on here. So the man that she's with has his gun out, and he's like, like slowly looking out the door, like opening, like, oh, what's up? What do you want? Who are you? And then the dude outside tried to push the door open and try to, start firing shots. And so the man on the inside with his gun, he returned fire, and I think he was able to put the other guy outside to death or like injure him. But based on like the caption and apparently it turned out to be that she tried to set him up. No, that's why she was so quick to try and open the door. And that's crazy, right? That your own woman, so-called, would do that. But it goes to show you, I'm using these modern day examples to show you what it was like back then. Of course, they weren't using guns, but the same concept, all right, of wickedness they were still doing back then. Verse 6, for the son dishonoreth the father, the daughter riseth up against her mother, the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are the men of his own house. And that's why he mentioned above that you got to be careful who you trust and what you say to people, because like it's so lawless. It's such a lawless society that even your own, there's no honor or order even within your own house. Verse 7, therefore I will look unto the Lord Yahweh. I will wait for the God of my salvation. And by looking unto the Lord, you're putting your hope and trust in the Lord, because even Micah understood that there's nothing he could do. And he understood it very well because he had been prophesying to these same people. And just like today, we put our trust in the Lord because we constantly warn and prophesy and tell these people, but they don't listen. The change is not going to come from them listening to us per se. It's going to come from the Lord taking action. And that's why we put our trust in the Lord and we just do as he tells us. So that's why we're not bothered when people don't stop and listen and, there's no community change happening. That's not, what the Lord said to happen anyway. The only quote unquote community that's going to change is the elect. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. See? And though, Micah mentioned the scarcity of righteousness, there was still that tiny bit, right? Just like when you go into that field after the harvest, even though a majority of the grapes and stuff would be gone, there would still be a tiny 1 or 2 or 3 left here and there. Verse 8, rejoice not against me, O mine enemy. When I fall, I shall rise, or I shall arise. When I sit in darkness, the Lord Yahweh shall be a light unto me. Right? So even though I may be, amongst the people that are destroyed, right? Even though my condition may not look the best, don't think that, you can rejoice over that, right? Or that's to your benefit, because the Lord is still going to raise us up. As it says, when I sit in darkness, and that's being in darkness is being in a bad position, right? Whether mentally or physically, but the Lord shall be a light unto me. So Micah, as we do today, put his trust in the Lord to say, like, I'm amongst these briars and thorns. I'm amongst wickedness all around. They don't listen. They don't listen to me. They don't listen to the Lord. They don't listen to the prophets. They just do whatever they want, and it seems like we're going backwards, but the Lord is going to be a light unto us, right? He's going to make things right. And that's why, verse 9, I will bear the indignation of the Lord, because Micah understood that this was happening as because the Lord was angry, right? It was a judgment of the Lord. Due to disobedience, he allowed this lawlessness to run, which would eventually lead to judgment. So the problem wasn't just that our people or Israel were being disobedient, and therefore it was just like a chaotic, lawless society. But the problem was also what that would warrant and what that would lead to. Okay, the problem is not just you're just shooting one another and committing all kinds of wickedness, and there's no peace, but also what's going to happen eventually if you keep on doing that. That's the real big danger, when the Lord decides, okay, now is judgment, now is go time. So as Micah says, I will bear the indignation of the Lord Yahweh, because I have sinned against him, until he plead my cause and execute judgment for me. So similar to what Isaiah said, right, that he is a man of unclean lips. and all our righteousness are as filthy rags. So we know we're not perfect, right? We know we have sinned. It says Micah knew he wasn't perfect, and he knew he had sinned, but his hope was in the Lord, right? That at the time when the Lord sees fit, he would plead the cause of his people, starting with his elect, to see, okay, I know I've unleashed my wrath upon them, but just like he did during the time of Noah, there are those that are going to find grace in the sight of the Lord, and those are the ones that he's gonna he's gonna execute judgment on their behalf and plead their cause. He will bring me forth to the light, and I shall behold his righteousness. See, and that's when the Lord, liberates us, right, from this vexed lifestyle that we have to live in, and brings us to the light. Okay, that deliverance, that peace, and ultimately that salvation. And that's what we're waiting for. And when that happens, right, then she that is mine enemy shall see it, and shame shall cover her, which said unto me, where is the Lord Yahweh thy God? Mine eyes shall behold her. Now shall she be trodden down as the mire of the streets. Now, usually we use this verse, right, Micah 7:10, in reference to actual women, particularly attributed to Israelite women, but women in general. But it's also applying to our enemies in general, okay, being these other nations, and the primary, on a nationalistic level, the primary enemy being Babylon or Esau, okay. But once again, on a physical level, you have like the physical level of it, where you actually have women that have made themselves adversaries or enemies to us, in unfaithfulness, and reproached brothers, for what we do in serving the Lord. And judgment will come upon them, and the Lord will have us witness it. Okay, but at the same time, you have, once again, going back to Psalms 83, our actual enemies, which are going to see our salvation, and they're going to experience the judgment and destruction that's going to come upon them when the Lord delivers us and comes back. And them being trodden down is the breaking down of their kingdom, being made subject under us, okay, starting with Yahushai. So, as it says now, when you actually look into, when you cross-reference this, interestingly enough, or even look in some of the other translations, majority of them just omit the word she. But whether the word she is there or it's omitted, we know that even on a personified level, sometimes nations are described as women, pronoun she. But the NLT, for example, it says, then mine enemies will see that the Lord Yahweh is on my side. So, this covers the heathen nations, right? This covers Babylon, this covers Esau, but it also covers enemies on on an individual level, right? That include women. They shall be ashamed that taunted me, saying, so where is the Lord, the God of yours? So this doesn't mean that they will say this verbatim, but they will, their actions, and whether it's looking down on us or mocking us or just, casting us aside for trusting in the Lord, a God that they don't believe in or they don't see. With mine own eyes, I will see their downfall. They will be trampled like mud in the streets. Okay, so on both levels, this would be fulfilled. And when you cross-reference it, you'll see that there are a lot of precepts that link this verse to Babylon. Okay, Psalms 137 and 8, and it links it in the sense of judgment coming upon them. For the atrocities committed against Israel, right? O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed, happy is he that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us, right? And I'm not going to read all these precepts, but they all, majority of them pretty much go into that. Okay. So right, in essence, right, it's you can see it in both senses, or no, on both levels. Verse 11, in the day that thy walls are to be built, in that day shall the decree be far removed. So Micah here, at least for these two verses, mentions, right, that in the day when thy walls are to be built, right, this is really in the end when the Lord has mercy on us. Okay, and the walls being built, meaning Micah knew and foresaw that there would come a time when Jerusalem and Israel would be destroyed. We would be removed from the land, and the walls would be broken down and destroyed, and so on and so forth. Right, we would be destitute. But there would also come a point in that day, right, when the Lord would have mercy, that there would be a rebuilding, and when that time would come, it would be in such abundance that, as it says here, in that day shall the decree be far removed. The decree goes into the border, okay, or in this case, like the bounds of the land. So you have here boundary, enactment, limit. Okay, so in this case, it's going to be far removed when you go into that word removed, to become far, to extend. Okay, and there are other precepts that line up with the borders being extended, so to speak, which just emphasize the fruitfulness, okay, or the position of fruitfulness that we're going to be in. And a precept for this is Amos chapter 9 verse 14. And I will, because Amos also mentioned this, as I've mentioned before, a lot of the prophets, even in the judgment they pronounced against Israel, they would always throw in there that at some point the Lord would overturn that. At some point he would still have mercy. At some point, he would turn away our captivity and deliver us from this condition. So Amos 9 and 14, and I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel. Bring again does not mean I'm going to put you in captivity again. It's Old English for I'm going to bring you out of captivity. So I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them, right? As we read in Micah, in the day that thy walls are to be built. Because we knew this is what we know, that this is future, because during the time of Micah, the walls were built, right? Jerusalem wasn't, the walls weren't broken down. It wasn't destroyed. And it says they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof. And they shall also make gardens and eat the fruit thereof. And I will plant them upon their land, and they shall no more be pulled up out of their land, which I have given them, saith the Lord Yahweh thy God. Okay, as I mentioned, in that day shall the decree be far removed. Verse 12, in that day also he shall come even to thee from Assyria, and from the fortified cities, and from the fortress even to the river. Just usually when you see the term the river, it's in reference to the Euphrates. And from sea to sea, and from mountain to mountain. And this is signifying, right, in that day, the gathering of the Lord's elect from no, I'm busy right now. The gathering of the Lord's elect from all four corners of the earth, okay, from the places of our captivity to the places we've been scattered, right, because that's what Assyria represents, from sea to sea and from mountain to mountain. So from the different areas where we've been scattered, in that time, the Lord would gather our people back to Israel, okay, in deliverance. Verse 13, right? And now Micah brings it back to, the focus, which is notwithstanding. So notwithstanding meaning, even though the Lord is going to bring mercy, right? Even though there's going to come a point in time when he's going to deliver us, notwithstanding, the land shall still be desolate. Okay, the land shall be desolate because of them that dwell therein, for the fruit of their doings, meaning you're still about to go through judgment. All right, you're still about to be, your land is about to be destroyed because you're still committing iniquity. So yeah, at a future time, it's not like you're just going to be completely destroyed forever. The Lord will have mercy, but you still about to get this work because of all this wickedness. Now, it's like this, right? It's like you're a child, you do something bad, something very bad, and you know you're going to get your ass beat, right? But your father comes home and then he sits you down instead and he starts talking to you and he starts lecturing you. And he tells you that, look, you're doing this, you're doing that. You know, you're not supposed to be doing that. That's not good. Okay. You know what that's going to lead to. But the reason we discipline you is because, we want you to grow up. You're a very smart child. You're going to grow up. You're going to do big things. And in the future, all this is going to be behind. You're just a child, but you're going to be very good in the future. You're going to be taken care of. Everything is going to be all good. And then he says, okay, now give me the belt. All right. Because he's giving you the lecture, right? He's giving you the pep talk, right? He's admonished you, but now it's time for the judgment because you're still not going to escape this ass whooping, right? Because you still did the crime. And we know that in a process of time that happened, right, via the Assyrians, via the Babylonians, and they made the land desolate. Let's actually get that because Isaiah also saw that. Okay, this is Isaiah chapter 6, verse 11. Remember, they were contemporaries. Then said I, Lord, how long? And this was Isaiah. Salakia, this is Isaiah asking in reference to when the Lord mentioned of keeping these people blind and making their heart fat. And the response was, and he answered, until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without man, and the land be utterly destroyed, and the Lord Yahweh have removed men far away, and there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land. So Amos saw, Amos did see, but Micah saw it, Isaiah saw it. The Lord, remember, it was the same God, same spirit that was coming to the different prophets to come and prophesy, right? So they saw the destruction and judgment that would come upon Israel, both immediately and in the future sense. Verse 14, feed thy people with thy rod, the flock of thine heritage, which dwell solitarily in the wood. Because now this is going into the blessings, right, that the Lord would bring upon us. So as it says here, the flock of thine heritage, which dwell solitarily in the wood, in the midst of Carmel, let them feed in Bashan or Bashan and Gilead. These areas were known for, like when they mentioned the cows of Bashan, they were good. They were fat because there was a lot of good pasture in these different regions. So when it says let them feed in there, it means, basically like let them be nourished as in the days of old. Okay, and it's likening us to being like these cows and oxen and cattle being allowed to be fed, with good food and nourished. As in the days of old, like in the time of peace. According to the days of thy coming out of the land of Egypt. So just like those times when the Lord brought us out of Egypt, will I show unto him being Israel, marvelous things. Okay, once again, starting with the elect. And the Lord is saying here via Micah that just like he showed us miraculous things in delivering us out of ancient Egypt, he's going to show us miraculous things again. Okay, more so in this time as he delivers us again. The nations shall see and be confounded at all their might. They shall lay their hand upon their mouth. Yeah, because they're going to see the raising up of Israel from this low state that we're in. And they're going to be confounded because it's going to be so far, as it says in Wisdom of Solomon 5, so far beyond all that they looked for, right? And seeing the Lord, raising up Israel, increasing us in strength and glorifying us and changing us, they're going to be at a total loss of words. They shall lay their hand upon their mouth, their ears shall be deaf. And I'm going to pull this up in the NLT. All the nations of the world will stand amazed at what the Lord will do for you. They will be embarrassed at their feeble power. They will cover their mouths in silent awe, deaf to everything around them. So they're going to be stunned. They shall lick the dust like a serpent. And what that means is they're going to be brought low, right? They're going to be based. They shall move out of their holes like worms of the earth. They shall be afraid of the Lord Yahweh our God, and shall fear because of thee. Right, because the Lord is going to come back with terror to dominate and to take over, and he's going to raise us up in like manner and in like stead. And this is why they're always going to be under us. They're not going to think to come up against us, because they're going to be afraid. And this is all what the Lord is going to do for us. Who is a God like unto thee, that pardoneth iniquity, and passeth by the transgression of the remnant of his heritage? See? And there's no other God that's as merciful as our God. You look at these heathens, their gods don't show mercy like that. Which, according to their beliefs, because their gods are really just idols. But the Most High is different, right? He is a merciful power. That's why Micah is saying, like, what other God is like thee? With all this transgression, all this iniquity, you still pardon us, right? You pass by the transgression of the remnant of your heritage, right? So to basically put aside the iniquity of his remnant, of his elect, so that he may have mercy on them. He retaineth not his anger forever, because he delighteth in mercy. So the Lord would rather mercy than destruction. And even though he is justified in retaining his anger, he still, puts that away to rather delight in mercy. And that's why even till this very day, the Lord didn't have to wake us up. He didn't have to give us a chance at repentance before bringing this destruction. But he delights in mercy. And therefore, he still gave us this chance. He will turn again. He will have compassion upon us. Because remember, the Lord at one point turned himself away from us. But he will now return and have compassion on us. He will subdue our iniquities, and thou will cast all their sins into the depths of the sea. So our sins are no longer going to be before the Lord. It's going to be like they say today, water under the bridge. So the Lord's not going to look at us and remember our iniquities anymore. Rather, he's going to have mercy. He's going to deliver us, and it's going to be like a clean slate. And that's why our kingdom is going to be everlasting forever, because we're going to have a clean record at that point, and we're no longer going to stain that, because we're going to be perfect. Verse 20, thou wilt perform the truth to Jacob, the truth meaning the faithfulness of his promise to Jacob, and the mercy to Abraham, which Jacob, these two phrases are synonymous with each other, okay? Because that truth and that faithfulness comes with that mercy. And, Jacob and Abraham are of the same stock. Okay, so this is the Lord ultimately having mercy on Israel and fulfilling his promise to us, which thou hast sworn unto our fathers from the days of old. And that's what we're about to get into, all right, or we're about to enter into in these days, right? That's what these last days are going to lead to. It's going to lead to the Lord performing that truth and mercy that he has sworn unto our fathers and fulfilling his promise. And that brings us to the end of the book of Micah, the 7th chapter, as well as the entirety of the book of Micah. So Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rechak Wadash. And until next time, Shalom.